Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American podcast. I'm excited about my guests. As always, I'm excited about all my guests because they all bring a different, a unique perspective and vibe to the podcast. And I'm happy to welcome Anthony to the podcast. Anthony, welcome. How are you?
Hi. I'm doing excellent, Carrie, and thank you for having me.
All right. I am excited to get into this conversation. But before we do, why don't you tell the community of friends a little bit about who you are, Caribbean country you represent, and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I hail from the Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago, home of calypso, steel pan, soca music, and I am currently leading the employee experience and critical programs for Amazon Music. And I'm also a musician. I sing reggae, soca, and dancehall music. And I just launched an EP recently called Good Vibes Only, and I'll be going on tour to spread some good vibes.
Boy, I tell you, if you are not Caribbean in a package, right? So you work a full-time job, you're a musician, you're going on tour, you have multiple jobs, but parlaying your different talents and what we do. So before we get to your job at Amazon, tell me how this EP come about. Like, what's the story about your music career? And give us a little bit more of that backstory.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been introduced to music since I was a kid. Really, since the age of 10, I entered an extempo competition. So that was really my first foray into, performing and stuff like that. But fast forward to the present, I had this really cool opportunity to enter a talent show competition, and I kind of went viral with my performance. And the public relations team at Amazon asked me to do a music video to celebrate the bar raiser program at the company because of the performance I did. I kind of integrated some of the company culture into some of the lyrics and stuff, and people loved it. So I became very popular, and the head of HR asked me to do a song for our Back to the Office initiative around COVID and health and safety stuff. And when that opportunity presented itself, I said, you know what, this is really cool. I want to make this really professional. And I reached out to one of the top producers from Trinidad called KC Phillips of Precision Productions to see if he could partner with me on it to bring the project to life. And we worked together, we delivered on it, everybody loved it. And from there, Casey and I decided to partner in doing this EP called Good Vibes Only. And it has a mix of reggae, dancehall, soca, I was able to go home to Trinidad and some of the trucks were playing the music and stuff this year past Carnival. So it really turned out well and I'm continuing to, just share the music. And that's how it came about.
Wonderful. So, to get in your business a little bit, you're taking time off from work to go on tour?
Actually, I'm doing a little bit of both. I'm trying to kind of like work remotely and also like take, for the day after when I have to travel, I'll take the day off to travel. And I'm trying to make it work for the tour. So yeah, yeah.
That makes
Good
sense, that
question
makes
though.
sense, that makes sense because we're, remote work or whatever city you go up in the Amazon office and work, and then
Hmm.
you go do your show later, and then, you log on
Exactly,
later.
exactly.
So we're making the remote work situation.
Multitasking, multitasking.
Yes, and now you said that what are you doing with Amazon Music? Tell me about that again.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm on the people experience and technology team, doing a program management function for critical people programs and employee experience. So I basically trying to analyze any of the defects that employees experience within the business and drive programs to address those pain points.
All right, that's all fancy and stuff, but basically you are keeping a list of all of the problems and telling how to fix it,
And
basically.
yeah, basically, what is the problem? This is the recommended solution. Let's try and get that approved and move forward with it. That's in a nutshell.
Wonderful. All right, so now you're at Amazon and you are the president of their Black employee network.
Yes, yes. So I've served in a leadership capacity with our Black Employee Network for the last 5 years, going on six. I recently have transitioned my president role, and I'm an advisor to our Black Employee Network. But for the last 6 years, I was in a leadership capacity. I was president of our Black Employee Network HQ chapter here in Seattle. And I really enjoyed that because it allowed me to really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and really have a seat at the table and influencing the way in which Amazon goes about, addressing the opportunities that we uncovered for ourselves as Black employees. So it's very empowering, with being in that position. And I had an amazing board of directors that focus on professional development, recruiting a pipeline of Black talent into the company. We, of course, would drive community involvement initiatives and work with strategic partners around STEM, especially around younger folks coming in into the company, getting the skills necessary to do so. Networking as well. We work very closely with local Black-owned businesses and try to integrate them into the different programs that Amazon has to offer to that can help them with their business. So yeah, it's been a great role. I had a lot of fun times with it, and also a lot of I guess meaningful opportunities to kind of address I guess gaps in opportunity. I would just mention one, for example. I was one of the program managers that helped to launch Amazon's Black Business Accelerator, which is a $150 million commitment that Amazon made to support Black-owned businesses. And that was really fulfilling, being able to be at a company like Amazon and actually advocate for programs like that that impact the community.
I love that you work at Amazon and have this big unicorn company experience because it gives us some kind of context, right? But it's also an outlier. Most people don't work at companies that have the resources that Amazon has to develop a ERG or employee resource group like is the acronym is BEN
Yes, yeah, Ben, Black Employee
the
Network, yeah.
network, right? So a network like that. So um based on the years you've spent in that role, have you come across people who've worked at other companies who didn't have the resource to do an ERG, or maybe they did have the resource, but they haven't formed one, and some of the challenges that they're experiencing there, especially for people who are, like how do they, thrive, develop professionally, make connections. So let me know if you had any of those experience and your insight for anyone who's at such company where there is no resources for one or the company don't have one, etc.
Yes, good question. Quite consistently over the years, I've spoken to individuals at smaller companies or the ones that didn't have an ERG. A lot of times they were seeking advice to your question. And what I did do in those moments was kind of act in a mentorship capacity around, you needing to take ownership of the creating that resource through the engagement with leadership. So I would often give them like a blueprint of how one would go about establishing an ERG, which essentially would want it to evolve to a BRG, business resource group, in the future once it's developed. But the first thing is really to develop a plan on what are the needs and what gaps that you have uncovered as an employee, and really get a sponsor, an executive sponsor at the company. And if nobody's doing it, you gotta do it yourself a lot of times in these situations. And I think just taking the time to have a strategic plan, create your proposal, and get that executive sponsorship, that would be one way to navigate it. I think a lot of times, though, folks may find themselves being in a company where there isn't much diversity, and that in and of itself is a challenge. And there really isn't much you can do, but there's still an opportunity to kind of advocate for the DEI opportunities and advocate for the resources around the underrepresented groups there, even if there isn't a significant population at the company. So there's still a way in which you could go about kind of creating programming for the folks that are there, even if it's not a large body.
Wonderful. So what is the difference between a ERG, employee resource group, and a BRG? And what do you mean that you think the ERG should eventually become a BRG? That's
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
sure. So I would start with saying there's an affinity group, which would be more so folks are networking and coming together as a community without much strategic. programming outside of the networking and us just having a safe space for each other. The ERG would be actually folks developing the programming where they have different focus areas, such as the professional development, the networking, the community involvement, the culture committee, the business development piece, where you're partnering with the business to drive programming for your community. And then the BRG would be the evolution from the affinity group to the ARG to then the business resource group, where the business itself is actually a stakeholder and is driving impact along with the ERG as stakeholders in, as consultants to the strategic programming around DEI for the company. And that's where you would see, for example, ERGs are being paid, the leaders that are part of the ERG in a business resource group, they will also be paid or compensated for their time and dedication and work. Whereas affinity groups and ARGs, they're typically volunteers.
In a previous interview that you did on Bridge to You with Monique, one example you gave was, or maybe two examples you gave, where one member, maybe board member of Ben, they created a gateway, or I can't remember what it was for beauty products. It was something like that.
Yeah, we call it entrepreneurship, by the way. So,
Okay.
so when an employee, uncovers an opportunity for a business idea at the company and it's launched, that's through an entrepreneurship, we call it. And one of those, for example, I would give is one of our former presidents of Ben, Ravina Valashi, and one of the former board members, Kim Hill. They came up with an idea to launch a black hair care storefront on Amazon. And the customer problem was when they searched, they couldn't find products that, for their demographic as Black women. And that was a pain point. And, at Amazon, we're very customer obsessed, and we also have a very specific way in which we try to navigate and address business problems. So they wrote a PRFAQ, which is a press release frequently asked questions document, in which they presented this idea to launch the storefront to our past CEO of Consumer, Jeff Wilkie, and he loved it and he funded the idea and they were able to get resources, engineers, product managers to launch a storefront, and it's called Textures and Hues, and it's actually still on Amazon.com. If you go Amazon.com// Textures and Hues, you'll be able to see that storefront and shop from it. And that's how they went about it, really kind of a very Amazonian way, leaning into our leadership principles of customer obsession, invent and simplify, and documenting the solution to being able to solve that.
Wonderful. As you were explaining that, it reminds me, I watch a lot of documentaries, and it reminds me of Pixar when they do their shorts and how they have people in Pixar, they create movies, and then there's a whole team that's dedicated to the two people who are selected. So it's very fascinating to see how large companies, they dedicate the same resources for projects that develop internally as a passion of their employees. So one of the reasons why I knew I wanted you on the podcast is that, you know, I try to balance the conversations around entrepreneurship and being a business professional. You have a career, or maybe you're in between, you have a side hustle and you work a full time job. And, I want to speak to our audience that's a mixture and just balance that conversation, because I think there is value in all three, but we need to speak more to those who have just doubled down and being, in corporate and doing both, and how to also lean in and be part of the work culture, right? You've done such a great job with that song for Amazon and their culture. And so I wanted to talk about the benefits of, if you're working a full-time job, what it means to just lean in and be part of work, because not everyone has a perfect work experience. I know I don't, and even in the best of work scenarios, I know you have bad days at Amazon too. But how do you lean in and make that experience your own? Like, I work here and it's not
Hmm.
perfect, but I come here for 8 hours a day. I'm gonna make the best of it because I want to succeed. I want to do well. So, talk to me a little bit about how you've been able to lean into your different passions and bring those elements to work with you and let it be part of your personal employee brand that helps
Mm-hmm.
you to succeed and thrive at Amazon and outside of Amazon with your EP good vibe self?
Yes, yes, great question, and it's a very thought-provoking question as I reflect on it. So thank you for bringing it up. I think it starts with having a mental model of leaning into what makes you peculiar as an individual and not being afraid to share that within the work environment. And a lot of times, I can speak myself as a Black Caribbean male in the corporate space. There is a level of imposter syndrome that does come about because at a large tech company like Amazon, there's still, an opportunity, to see more folks like myself. And living in Seattle, I'm one of the few Caribbean folks, even in the tech space still. So with that said, I've been very proactive in embracing who I am fully in the work experience and not shying away from, the fact that I'm Caribbean, the fact that I'm a musician, and identifying what are the opportunities at work in which I could integrate my passions. And I think that was the formula that allowed me to, one, first be comfortable with being able to share a little bit more about myself, but then also being proactive in, well, there's this opportunity for me to write a song for the company. Has anybody ever done that before? Should I do it? Would I be looked at strangely for doing it? And not really care and just lean into that because I enjoy it, right? I think it's important for us to address issues surrounding race and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I aligned myself in a leadership capacity with our Black Employee Network and, leaned into that, and that brought a lot of joy and fulfillment. So I think you have to be comfortable with bringing the elements of yourself that you may feel to maybe inappropriate or maybe feel that people may, look at you differently. Um, and I think that in and of itself, that process, being comfortable with it, will bring a lot of fulfillment in the workplace.
All right. So you make that sound so easy, right? So easy, right? But
Sure,
you
sure.
you said it, you know, um, and you didn't give this context, but you were in New York before you went to Seattle. So if you're in New York, you kind of feel comfortable-ish, showing up as Caribbean in the workplace because this is
Right,
New
yeah.
York, right? But you have people who are other parts of the country where the Caribbean population dwindles as you move
hmm
further from the eastern seaboard.
I'm experiencing it right now living in Seattle, so I get it.
Right. So, what do you say to the person listening of Caribbean heritage, maybe born in the region or they're, first generation born here, how they can be authentically themselves at work and what it means to
Mm-hmm,
show up as Caribbean in the workplace? And aside from the flag, but like what
mm-hmm,
does that mean or what did that look like for you, a black man with an accent who can
mm-hmm.
sing showing up at work? What does that look like and what are like some baby steps? Because I mean, part of being a singer you perform and maybe that took a little courage, but for other people maybe they don't have a talent like singing to break the ice.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How else can people bring that into the workplace?
I think you have to find outlets that accommodate that process. And a lot of that may come about by the communities that you can be a part of to start breaking the ice around your identity. For example, a lot of organizations will have something called Toastmasters where you get to speak. And, I'm a member of Toastmasters. And I think what I do a lot of times is I lean into the fact that I'm Caribbean. I always tell people, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and any of the icebreakers, I would lead meetings with clients and say, the accent you hear is from Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm very vocal about my identity and where I'm from. I think for folks that, you know, don't have a lot of Caribbean people at work, but want to be more comfortable or have the opportunities. It's creating those moments and being intentional about ways in which you can share a little bit about yourself and your culture and your heritage in those conversations. Especially I think when you're doing meetings and stuff. you're doing a presentation. Hey guys, my name is Antony Cole. I'm a senior program manager for Amazon Music. You actually hear from Trinidad and Tobago. I actually just came from Carnival. Like you just bring that up. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, people are going to be really intrigued and interested and remember you because that's unique and different and they haven't experienced someone like you before. So sharing a little bit about yourselves when you have those opportunities, I think is ways in which you can kind of do it smartly and not in a very abrasive way.
I love that. I remember one time, even here in New York, someone says, "Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, I'm from Jamaica. Jamaica, the island, not Jamaica, Queens," because because it's a follow-up that I've gotten before, like Jamaica, Jamaica, or Jamaica, Queens. So I had to, but I've used that in an opening and it has helped. There are times that I don't have an accent at work. And,
Hmm.
when a family member calls and I start whispering and a little bit of the accent come out, somebody always perks up. I'm like, did I hear an accent? And you're just, so it's the opportunity to educate. So there's a long-standing discussion about people bringing their full selves at work, and or when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are some people who feel like it's not my job to teach you. Google is your friend. What is your position on that? And how does that help or hurt um or cause to have more diversity and inclusion at work? So I'd love to
Hmm.
hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, good question. I would address this by thinking about the experience I had during the George Floyd movement. As I shared, I was a leader of our Black Employee Network, and in the capacity of being a Black Employee Network leader at a time like that in which we were going through so much turmoil and need for folks to kind of lean into um, activations around it, I found myself being overwhelmed at work with doing my day job and also being one of the leaders or the face of the Black people at the company. And it was very stressful. And every few minutes, folks would be reaching out for me to speak to their business about, things that we could be doing to address what's going on. And it was kind of overwhelming. And I remember being annoyed when someone wanted me to talk about my experience as a black male that has several times experienced racial profiling by the police growing up in Brooklyn, New York. Several times I experienced that growing up. I have so many examples. I even wrote a song about it. But I remember being frustrated and not wanting to, to your point, be the person to educate these white folk or folks that are not from the black race on the experiences as a black person. And in my emotional state, I was leaning towards not having those talks, having those conversations around my experience. And then I paused and I said, you know what, Anthony, this is an opportunity for you to educate, and not doing it is more harmful than doing it because this was one of the first time there's so much attention on this issue. You have an opportunity to share your experience and bring people along the idea of how easily folks are discriminated against because of the color of their skin, around the experience of microaggressions that they never think about that they actually do. This is your opportunity to be able to do that, and you are a leader, so you shouldn't shy away from it, from this opportunity. So, um, as I was wrestling in my mind at that time around the burden of doing it, I came to the conclusion that it was more impactful, it would be much more productive to actually share. And yeah, I started to speak about those experiences, and it was quite impactful. I received anecdotes from people because a lot of these, it was Zoom about Chime. We use Chime at Amazon, and it would be sometimes these Chime calls have 200 people, 500 people. So I would get a lot of messages after or emails thanking me for talking about it. And wow, I never knew that you guys experience things like that. I'm also right now, I'm part of a reverse mentorship program where a senior leader is paired up with an underrepresented employee for them to give insight into their experiences at the workplace. And that has been extremely impactful more so to the leader to learn about, wow, I need to be thinking about the experiences of my minority employees and what are the best practices and things that I could implement to address some of these pain points that they experience in their experience as employees. So, yeah, I would say it's better to just gain that confidence and share your insight as a from your experience as a black person, especially if you have had horrible experiences, as folks are just not aware of it. They're clueless a lot of times, and if we don't do it, who will?
You're right. And in some instances, there's an added layer of being an immigrant, the assumptions that are made about your immigration status and all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff
Yeah.
when you're in the workplace. And you know, in my case, I've had someone said that they didn't want to go to Jamaica and if I smoke weed, and I was like, what, does every Jamaican smoke weed? Just like, I don't get it. Like, and I was very pregnant at the time when they asked. I'm just looking at them like, are you crazy? It's just,
See, you see, if you needed to dispel that, you know, let's
it's like,
expel that ignorance.
yeah, or if you know about it, that means you smoke. I'm like, so I know where they sell alcohol means that I'm an so it's a balance. And to your point, it depends on where you are emotionally at the time that the request or
Yeah.
they come, because if it's a heavy day, your initial reaction is just to react and say, this is not my problem, this is your problem. And you know or opportunity to educate, um, from using or firsthand experiences are almost always more impactful than reading it, um, about someone else who they don't have a connection to. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, sometimes you don't feel like it, and that's a natural and normal reaction depending on the circumstance. So, as we wrap up a little bit, what are you looking forward to in this next chapter? You are advisor, you're off on your world tour. Okay, maybe it's a local tour, but I'm manifesting a world tour for you. I'm
Yes,
manifesting
yes.
the world tour for you. And what advice do you give to other people who are balancing this brand internally and then they have all of this other activity outside of work? How do you help them balance that? I don't know if you have, like, you're a singer on your LinkedIn, but that's a question that I struggle with sometimes. Like, I either put my job on there or don't put the podcast on there, or have my podcast, don't put the job. So how do you manage these distinct identities, especially across social media?
Yeah, good question. I often struggled with it. So early in my career, I was in banking, private banker, and that's a much more suit and tie, button up corporate, much more militant environment. Like even emails, there's sensitivity on how you can write emails and stuff from that culture. And like I said, since I was 10 years old, I was always into my music all the way to present. And I used to really struggle with the identity of being someone that's in the arts outside of work. And I started to more and more expose folks to that. So, for example, when I got married, I had a music video that from the wedding in which I wrote a song for my wife and I performed it at the wedding. So I would share that video a lot of times with clients and getting to know them. So that was with an easy, nice, organic way to kind of get them to know a little bit more about me and stuff. And then fast forward to the present. I think I still, if I'm transparent, wrestle with the idea of being too far on the spectrum of artists and or too far on the spectrum of corporate professional. And I think on my LinkedIn, I've had smart ways of introducing folks to my talent. For example, the song I did for the company, it's on my page, but that's connected to the company. My alma mater, City College of New York, they reached out to do an article celebrating me as an alum, and inviting me to speak to the students. And for the article, they also kind of spoke about my music and a song I did called Rise Up because it was very inspirational. and I posted that on my LinkedIn. So I find ways to introduce folks to that side of me without it being too heavily represented on LinkedIn, because I still feel it's a professional platform, even though the dynamics of it has changed a lot and is much more social media, the type of content we are seeing on there. So if I'm honest, I still wrestle with how much of that do I want to market or present on LinkedIn, but I'm comfortable enough to let people know, hey, I'm a musician and I'm performing, because I talk about it on podcasts like these and I post them and people hear about it. So there's that. And I think the advice to people that have duality, that have so much, multi layers to themselves, I think, you know, you will suffocate if you don't lean into those things that bring you joy, that you are passionate about. And I think the most fulfillment comes when, you are bringing along those elements of yourself and sharing them even in the workplace, or finding ways to do it to the level in which you're comfortable. Like I've performed at Amazon, right? I've performed at all hands and stuff like that. And people might think I'm crazy, like what you do it performing with your Caribbean accent at work. But I love it, and it seems like people love it because I keep getting asked to do it. So, and whatever it is, if you're an artist or somebody who likes to paint, maybe suggest to your team, hey, why don't we have a paint and sip night to bring yourself along and immerse your workplace environment. Try and just think of creative ways to do that. I mean, there's ChatGPT now. Maybe prompt ChatGPT around some ideas on how you could go about doing that. I'm being funny there, but I do think it's important, and there has to be a balance to it that you're comfortable about, because I myself, I'm struggling with it in certain ways.
Thank you for sharing that. I do struggle with the LinkedIn. I am not
Hmm.
very good on the social media. Like the social media is good for the podcast, but LinkedIn, I've struggled with it a lot. And my full-time job isn't listed on LinkedIn, not because I'm
Hmm.
keeping it a secret, but yeah, maybe part of it is because I just don't know how to balance this world of podcasting and stuff with what my job
Hmm.
is. And because I can't find that alignment, I'll leave what my podcasting stuff is and then deal with business later
Hmm.
because, a lot of times clients when I go on my LinkedIn and you see who's looked at your profile, all the clients that I work with, they start searching me. Is this the same Carrie Ann, that I was talking to? I don't
Yeah,
see this
yeah.
job here. So I do struggle with that. But I think people in the office, they do know, they're like, do you know she does podcasts? And they're just like, yeah, I do know. When do you find the time? I'm like, but it's okay to struggle with it. I think that's the point we're trying to make. It's okay to struggle with it, but in terms of how to make it feel cohesive on a platform like LinkedIn, but the balance to that is people internally through casual conversations, they know that I have a podcast and they'll say, "Can I listen to it?" I said, "Well, if you don't mind Caribbean accents, you surely could listen to it." But I think for me, it's important as we go through this time where people are going back to work, they're not doing entrepreneurship as much. I think it's important to do a better job of how we equip people to navigate and bring the duality of ourselves into the workplace and lean in and enjoy work or take up that space as we rightfully should. So thank you, Anthony, for being on the podcast and for sharing such wonderful insights, reverse mentorship. I'm like, this is the perk of working at big companies. Like, say what? So, why don't you tell the community of friends where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media at Antony Cole Music. So Antony Cole Music, Cole spelled Cole, on LinkedIn. No, LinkedIn is Antony Cole, but on IG, Antony Cole Music, Twitter, A Cole Music, Facebook, Antony Cole Music, YouTube, Antony Cole Music. Just search for that. You should be able to find me. And I would definitely love for you to check on my EP, Good Vibes Only. Uh,
I
it's on
I was just
all.
about to say, I wouldn't be channeling my, New York disc jockey vibe and say, why don't you drop a little 1, 2, 3 little bar here on the episode? I mean, let's pretend you're on WBLS or whatever, and they say, you sing a one song to take us out to close the segment. I
Um,
definitely gotta check it out, but you're welcome to. I'm joking, but you're welcome to sing a song and people are, a part of the song and, whatever. But I find it fascinating, to be honest, that you're doing this.
yeah, no, I mean, I'll share some lyrics. Living in a world of conflict and gun. Sometimes you want to check out and done. Sometimes you want to give up and run. Gotta keep holding on. Rise up again. Never let them get you down. Never let them rise up again. Believe in your dreams. Yeah, rise up, rise up, rise up.
I love that. Thank you so much. Boom bang. Carry on, friends. You've heard it first.
Pa, 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 pa.
Purr, 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 purr. Thank you, Anthony. This was so much fun. I enjoyed having you on the podcast. I definitely am going to check out this EP and share it with my fellow podcaster who does Style and Vibes. And you might hear from she too to talk about your album. So, and as I love to say at the end of every episode, walk good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie, and appreciate it.